Hey team, wanted to make a video because I just read a book. It was called The Game Changer, and it was actually, I believe, by Rachel Reed. And I read it because I just read a book referred to me by a friend that was about LGBTQAI2 plus love. It was about a lesbian couple, and I was looking for another audiobook directly after because I got back in the oh, I want an audiobook phase. I've been out of it, and so I wanted another audiobook, and I was scrolling, and there wasn't a lot that seemed that interesting to me, just in way of subjects that I would normally be drawn to. So I did end up finding this one. It was actually it was fluff, and I do like fluff, but I've been trying to I read a lot of fluff in my youth, and so I try to broaden my horizons, but I do like fluff. I do like fluff. It's true. I went through a phase where I also did read LGBTQ. I watched a lot of like soap opera minis, and I did read fan fiction that was LGBTQAI2 plus, a few films. And in my young adulthood, I enjoyed very much. I am an ally. I was an ally. I went to training. I was in the Rainbow Alliance in college, and so I do believe that love is love, and I don't believe in hate. I want people to care for each other, and I don't want your gender or your sex to be a problem in it shouldn't be a problem. That who you love is personal, and who you partner with too is also personal, and it's communal to a certain extent. But also it is also personal. So I believe love is love, and I want to promote that. I want to promote happiness for all peoples. And you love who you love, you fall in love with who you fall in love with. So that being said, I did kind of take a break from a lot of that, but I took a break from a lot of like reading and like all fiction essentially for a few years, and I told my friend this too. I took a break from a lot of fiction. I was doing a lot of nonfiction and looking into the sciences and environmental stuff specifically, but also I've been getting back into the human rights books. I read some last summer, and so I think I made a few book club videos about those ones as well. So going back to those, but this did come up, and I actually have gotten some internet hazing about my sexuality, and I've made videos here on my sexuality, about the one who got away, of course, and I don't know what else I've divulged. but I'm not getting into it now. So we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about a book. So I I read this book. I believe it's called The Game Changer, by Rachel Reed, and I was surprised just because I have read many a romance novel in my time and fluff pieces. A lot of them were coming of age, and so they didn't really necessarily hit on the sex element as much. And this is another thing too with the book that I just read, that I was like, wow, graphic sex, and but I'm thinking that it's meant to be educational. I think that's what it is, and I think I mean, we shouldn't be ashamed of sex, but before what I had read, the norm was like two times in a novel, whether it be fantasy or whether it be a romance, for otherwise it's kind of ribald. It's kind of wow, sex, right out there. But I think that this was educational. I did actually end up skipping a lot of the scenes. I listened to the first like however many handful, and then I was like, okay, no, now it's like I've read about sex, and gay sex, the what to do in the, so I and so so I'm not a stranger to that. So I did fast forward some of that because I didn't necessarily need the lessons per se. Again, after the first however many, I was able to extrapolate, the meaning, because I felt like a voyeur. I felt like it was private and it was information that I didn't actually need to be privy to per se. But I think it's also to show that people can write a real scene, a real relationship, and I think that's kind of what it was trying to show. And that's the difference with the book I just read was about a lesbian relationship, and it had the sex element there, but it didn't necessarily go into detail, and I feel like that is stereotypically, like the romance of the, a stereotypical like female romance. Just a little hint, just a little kiss, a little touch of it. It's very sexy, very cute. And so that's something, whereas this book I read was, it was the gay males, and so it was more just straightforward sex. And, I have heard, of course, that females are like that too, that they can appreciate that as well. And of course they can. So it was. Of course they can. That is true. That it was a very sexy book. It was very sexual. And so we must not be modest and steer away from being overt about what we like and what we want. It is good. It is a good thing to communicate those things, and to not, you don't need to hint at it. You can hint at it a little bit, but you can do both, because you can, and so you should. But this it was sexual, but it was very, very sexual. But again, I do feel like it was trying to be true to life. I feel like it was trying to be descriptive and showing, but it was also educational in that it touched a lot of different bases in like a sex life, in your sexual exploration with your partner, because it touched on, first meeting, like first times, and, it talked about masturbation. It talked about like, appreciating masturbation in each other. It talked about online, video sex, and it talked about like phone sex, and, like things like that. And that's something that does happen. You are going to be away from your partner, and you are going to still want to, you're still going to want that person. You're still going to want to be sexual with that person. And there shouldn't be bars on that. You should want to be with them, and you should be able to be with them. And so, talking, and it brought that up in the book as well, of the, boundaries too, and this one's in a public spot, so we are not going that far, but maybe a little, on the phone, not, but just talking about the dynamics of it, and to talking about, the different encounters you might find yourself in, so you are not afraid per se, and you might have a better idea of what to do, so you don't go in and just are like, oh my gosh, no, whatever, what. So that's, so it wasn't a bad thing. It touched on all the different elements, different encounters that you can have. And of course, it talked about pleasuring a man, how to do it, strategies as well. Obviously, there are two men in the gay relationship, so different things. And a lot of the strategies are also very well taken on by females, so that's good. Whereas in the lesbian book, I did notice that it didn't have as many overt, but of course that's also the stereotypical, diminutive, romantic, and a little bit hot, but not overt sexuality, but they didn't really talk about how to pleasure a woman. but with the two women, I mean, it did talk about, it was foreplay. It talked a lot about foreplay. There was foreplay, there was masturbation, there was foreplay, which is good because, if you don't want to hurt anyone, you don't want to get hurt, and so sometimes that oven needs a little bit of the play, like to grease things. Great. But it's also, it's your partner, and it's them, it's you and them, and it's their body is it's yours. You get to have that one. And so that's kind of built in. You just want it, and you want to play with all of the elements too. And so it's not necessarily foreplay. And so I guess it's very unsexy to be like, sometimes you need a little work to get the oven going. Which, sorry, that was too real. Maybe that's in a more mature relationship after a lot of times and whatever. But we don't have to talk about that. The oven's always going, and you're always primed and ready. Face palm. But it did talk about, the steps that you can take before penetration as well. With, just different things that you can do. And I have experienced in an encounter where perhaps someone, kind of knew of a small amount, but I was not there at all. And so I got out, but I also wasn't. It was kind of a misunderstanding, I think, a mistaken circumstance. There was alcohol involved. But they were very nice, and, getting to know that person would be fine, but knowing more going in isn't a bad thing. And I had read, and I was still a little terrified, and and so the communication wasn't there. It just wasn't, the connection wasn't there. It wasn't built yet, and the curiosity on the one side was met with terror on the other side, and what? No. Which, so that didn't happen in either of the romance novels that I read, which was very good because they had already built up the groundwork, and they had communicated, I am interested in you. Do you want to take the next step? And that's a big deal. That's a big part of, I want you. Do you want me? Can we pursue this? That's a big part. That's a big part. In the same expectations, and then being maybe a little terrified together, and experiencing that together, but not, you want to make sure the communication is there, essentially, and you want to kind of have some ideas of what to do. Relationships are complex because in the beginnings of them, of okay, but you are mine now, can I munch on you, that sort of stuff, like, when can you start? Essentially. So the books did have some elements of but the sexual tension was already there, and the desire was kind of already built in with the communications, and maybe furtive glances, and then they kind of did some of the foreplay type things, the nibbling on the neck, and the brushing, touching of the hair, and, things like that, and, so there are elements of that, and I don't need to go into detail for the detail on YouTube. Great. I'm gonna go cry. Talking sex with the internet. Good. But this book, it was very overt. It was very descriptive in this is how they are pleasuring each other. And it was often, and I think that is a good thing to kind of articulate when you're gonna want to often. It's gonna be a big thing that you're gonna want to often. You're gonna have to take days off where you don't get to have sex. You're gonna have to have self-control. You can't have sex anytime you want, and you have to, this of course had the added, one of them was a celebrity, and so they had to hide their relationship. They weren't comfortable in sharing this relationship. Sorry, something in my teeth. And so that was another element, because one was famous. They did have to hide it, and they had to, be mindful of how they were being perceived and how their relationship would be perceived and what that would do, how that would affect the other relationships in their lives. One was a professional athlete. Their fame was athleticism, and so they had to worry about sponsorships and the whole network of support in that relationship. And so it's taking a more as well as representing the LGBTQAI2 plus community. If it doesn't go well, it's going to terrify other people in that community, and they are not going to want to come out. They're not going to want to represent in that sport too. If it goes poorly, if it ruins your career, if things don't work, it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for your relationship. It's not going to, it might become your career or your relationship, and that's not, and so that was discussed in the book, the nuances of that, as well as just the miscommunications. Work was a pressing concern of, when are we going to be together, and then as well as just other frictions of building at the same time as, career bonuses, career goods. There might be some drama of prioritization, and obviously you want to support them in what they do, but there still might be some kerfuffles of upsetness, and that's natural if the communication isn't there, and if so, you might still feel sad or left out, and if that's something you can just communicate, and you can get over that, generally. But it did talk about that. It talked about a lot of the different nuances of the relationship. So at first I was like, oh, sex, a lot of sex, so much sex. And graphic. But it was, I feel like, trying to paint the entire scene of a real relationship, and that is graphic. It showed all the different steps, and it explained it, and it had the pleasure there, and like I said, I did fast forward after a while, just recognizing that I did not need all of the nuances. I got the gist of it, and I have read those things before, and I'd rather have it myself, thank you. It was voyeuristic. I don't want to live vicariously through you in this. I want you to have it. I want you to be happy. Good for you. I read the book for comprehension. It felt like it was comprehensive of the steps for relationships and for sexual encounters. But it was definitely different than I was expecting. Like I said, a lot of the books when I was coming of age had the 2 sex scenes, and you were good to go. So it was very, very different, but I think they're trying for real time. Okay, this is your relationship, a few days in between, now I'm staying at their place, oh, now you can move in, and so it was very much more, realistic, I think. So overall, I thought, it was definitely, I'd want to be conscientious of who I suggested to, given the fact that it was very much overt. And I don't know, how many people are comfortable with that, just out right off the and I don't know if I want, I didn't mind it. I thought it was, I felt like I was crossing a line, and I was, like I said, it was too much information for me, but it was still good information, showed a comprehensive understanding of sexual encounter in the gay intercourse. So it was good. It was, I don't know that I would recommend it per se, just because I felt like a voyeur, and I felt like it, I didn't need to know that, but it wasn't bad either. If that makes sense. But granted, I did actually, like I said, fast forward some of the sex scenes, because, you can love the penis, you gotta love the penis, but all of the cum, all of it, so much of it. That's good. It's good, and it's representative of what you want in life. And we're leaving it there. Happy sex scene. Go you. Good job. And so it was a book. I read it in a companion with an LGBTQAI2+ with a lesbian couple, and no, this video, I'm not shortening it. Of course, I'm not shortening it. Hopefully I'm getting all the letters every time, but actually, I wouldn't mind if we are doing lesbian relationships, seeing something that's a little more a little more comprehensive also, if we have to do comparative analyses. but I don't know. We'll see if there's another audiobook that sparks my interest. But it's spring. All of the creatures are making babies. We got bunnies. Easter is coming up. It's a time of rebirth, renewal of, spring is springing. And so happy sex, everyone. I hope that you live it, love it, enjoy it. I said in the last book, I am currently celibate. But kudos to those who aren't. Enjoy yourselves. Okay, bye.